Breaking the stigma of mental health illness in the Black community is not just a conversation, it's a revolution. Today, we're pulling back the curtains on the silent struggle so many face: depression, trauma, and relentless weight of the Superwoman Syndrome. It's time to reveal what's being hidden, not just the healing of individuals, but the power of the collective strength. This episode isn't just about awareness, it's about action, courage, and rewriting the narrative around mental health in our community. Our guest, Didi Hairston, is a mental health advocate, speaker, and the voice behind Diva with Depression. She's on a mission to start the conversation that leads to healing, hope, and transformation in the Black community. Welcome to Impactors Out Loud. I'm your host, Tracy B. Allen. Impactors Out Loud is where social impact meets strategy, spotlighting trailblazing entrepreneurs, their challenges, and the revolutionary innovations driving real change. Each week, we dive into powerful stories, strategies, and insight to inspire and equip those passionate about making an impact through business. Didi, welcome to Impactors Out Loud. I am so happy to have you here today because that is definitely a pressing issue in our community. So, Didi, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your cocktail?
Hi, thank you for having me, Tracy. Good to meet you. I am I am someone that lives with a mental illness and have lived with it since probably early childhood.
Mhm.
And when I had my first breakdown in 2006, I recognized that I could not find care, culturally competent care, a care team, a psychological care team that would be able to relate to my specific struggles in my community. So I started to sound the alarm and talk about how I could not find doctors that could relate to my struggles that I was going to, not only mentally, but environmentally and culturally. And that's a problem because if you can't relate to what I was going through um, in my personal life as a whole, then you wouldn't be able to treat me as a whole. And so
Right.
I decided that I was going to start talking about that, and that sort of lifted the rock on a whole bunch of struggles in our community. And I just started talking about it from then, and I had to
Okay.
keep going.
Okay. So you said when you had your breakdown in 2006?
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. In 2006, you realized then that mental health illness was something that you were struggling with from childhood. How did you make that correlation? And then tell us
Well,
what happened in 2006.
I had been on and off,
Oh, okay.
struggling from childhood. I In the fourth grade, I would go to a psychiatrist. A psychologist would come into the school, and I would
Mhm.
sit with someone during the day. But it was just, oh, she didn't talk as much. Oh, she, was having troubles, socializing, different things like
Mhm.
that. When I became a teenager, when I was about 16 years old, the doctor did say that I was struggling with, anxiety and ulcers, or, the start of ulcers. But in
Mhm.
2006, I had two kids and work. I was under a stressful job, and
Mhm.
everything sort of came to a head. The stress, I had relocated from New York, and just everything started coming to a head. Racism, corporate America, you
Mhm.
know everything just built up, and the breakdown happened. I wasn't taking care of myself,
Okay.
and so everything just than that. You have to start confronting, well, what happened at 2 years old? What happened at 6 years old? What happened at 10 years old? You really
Mhm.
have to start thinking about what led up to that, what
Okay.
contributed to how you handle these situations. Why do you do the things that you do? And you start to figure out that, as a Black woman, why do we stuff things? As a Black man, why do we ignore things? Why were we taught that what goes on in our house stays in our house? Why is there shame about, crying? Why is there shame about needing a hug, needing love? And so it's so much more than just having a bad hair day,
Mhm.
for us.
Mhm.
It's so much more than, you know, looking well put together when we walk out the house, but feeling like crap, on the inside,
Mhm.
lipstick and a good hairdo, covering up, feeling like crap. So
Mhm.
it's just so much more for us.
Mhm.
And it's so much, it's past time that we talk about that,
Mhm.
it's past time.
So, what did, because I think when people think about having a breakdown, a mental health
Mhm.
issue, or a mental health crisis, that they think about someone just doing the wildest things, right?
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
breaking up your house and just like just having a whole entire episode. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? I don't want to go
Right.
into all the details of what it could actually look like, but anything that crazy that you can think about or wild, that's what most people think a mental health crisis looks like.
Mhm.
Um, was it something like that for you, or was it something more subtle?
I will tell you that my initial, my unraveling, I call
Mhm.
it, started in the beginning of 2005. So at
Okay.
first, it was vertigo. I started getting
Mm.
dizzy. I started being off balance when
Mhm.
walking, and
Mhm.
then it started. I wasn't taking care of myself, so I'd go to work with wrinkled clothes. I stopped combing my hair, so I always wore a bun. But if you opened up my bun, it would
It
just be
wasn't cold.
tangles.
Yeah.
And then my driving was erratic. And my
Mm.
oldest daughter told her dad, like, mommy's driving kind of crazy. Sometimes we get a little scared. I
Mm.
was getting lost driving to work, a drive
Mm.
that I took every day for 5 years. I was
Mhm.
starting to get lost. Um, Eating, of course, overeating, but it wasn't overeating healthy foods. Entenmann's is, I always tell people that Entenmann's is my best friend, my comfort food. Um,
Mhm.
and so it just, things like that, irritability, you know. And so my doctor, I was fortunate that I had a Black woman for a primary care physician. And
Mhm.
so she started to recognize as things went on, like, okay, well, I'm going to take you out for a month. I'm going to put you on, bed rest for a month and see
Mhm.
where that goes. And then when she found out where I was working, she says, well, girl, you should have told me that from the beginning. I'd have took you out, then, because my company was notorious in
Ah.
Charlotte at that time. So
Mhm.
she took me out for a month at that time. And
Mhm.
then it started getting worse. My
Mhm.
skin started breaking out.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's little things. And yeah, you can break up, you know, your dishes and,
Yeah.
my car, little things like that. My car would be awful, just
Mhm.
stuff piling up.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
my thing was, I made sure that my kids were taken care of, so as long as they got to school, as long as they got to their activities,
Mhm.
nothing else mattered. You
Mattered.
know, insomnia, like I would be up 72 hours at a time,
Mhm. Mhm.
and then after 72 hours, then I could sleep for 34 hours at a time, 36 hours at a
Mhm.
time on the weekend.
Mhm.
Um, some people, um, it's weird. Some people will, their symptoms, they will shop,
Mhm.
they will spend money on things that
Mhm.
they don't need.
Mhm.
That's when with bipolar disorder. Those are some of the symptoms. The manias will be spending extremes amount of money on things that they don't need. Sex, some people will get hypersexual. Some
Mhm.
people will not want to have sex. Crying spells, just crying for no reason. That's me.
Mhm.
Um, it's different for different people. Anger, you know, um, thoughts, your thought process. And so I
Mhm.
was an investment analyst. I
Okay.
couldn't add 2 plus 2. I
Oh,
couldn't do it.
wow.
I'd be at work and it's just like, just sitting there, for an hour, just,
Trying to figure
what
out
do
your
you,
own job.
like, what do you want me to add this together? What are you
You're
talking
right.
about? And so it was things like that you start to notice. And that's why I tell people, write things down.
Mhm.
It's really, really important to start to write things that you notice. Just write it down. And by the time you get to
Mhm.
your physician, you'll have a list of things because, forgetting, a thought may not seem like a lot, but when you
Mhm.
add up everything together, by the time you get to your appointment, it all makes sense once you
Mhm.
put it all together. And your doctor will say, well, yeah, once you put it all together, there's something very serious wrong. And
Okay.
that's how she came to the conclusion that this is pretty severe and we're going to
Mhm.
have to do something about it.
Okay. Did your husband, you were married at the time?
Hmm.
Did your
Yeah.
husband realize anything? Did he bring anything up to you? Were you in denial and be like, no, I'm okay? Like, what are you talking about?
No, but I was in a
Okay.
situation that, excuse me, I
Mhm.
was in a situation that he wouldn't have. you know um
Mhm.
he was doing his thing, and he was selfish. And so as long
Mhm.
as the kids were taken care of and dinner was on the table, and he was part of the problem. I will leave it
Okay.
at that. And so,
Okay.
it wasn't until, I was just telling this story yesterday, it wasn't until my daughter went to him and said, mommy
Mhm.
is driving, kind of off,
Mhm.
that he realized that there was a problem, um, with that part.
Okay.
Now, the dressing, yes, he
Mhm.
did recognize that, you're not, what's up with the clothes, like,
Mhm.
why are you not dressing, or um chore, like keeping the house up and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I wasn't doing that anymore.
Mhm.
Um, those things those were noticeable things around the house that I would, like I said, the kids ate, the kids were clean, they were dressed or whatever, but
Mhm.
keeping up the house and all that stuff, I just didn't do. I didn't have the energy to do it anymore. So
Gotcha.
if it gets done, you got to do it. If not,
It's
you
just
know,
not gonna be done.
it's just not.
Okay. Yeah.
And then, to be honest,
Mhm.
I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds of, and I'm not just going to say husbands, but wives also.
Mhm.
But when it comes to men don't recognize these things. They really don't. Um, and unless you're sit them down and tell them,
Mhm.
like, this is what's going on, and this is a symptom of, they just don't recognize. And I don't know if it's because it's a denial thing, or
Mhm.
if they're wired differently from us, but they just don't, they don't understand. Like, what do you have? Just get over it, or have a beer.
Yeah, move on.
So, but
Yeah.
and it's not a knock on them.
Mhm.
It's just that they don't recognize that these are symptoms of a bigger
Of
problem.
depression. Mhm.
And so, like my brothers, I have two brothers, and we grew up in the same household. And till this day, the three of us can have a conversation. And I have two episodes where I interviewed my brothers, and the way we react to things, and the three of us were emotionally abused and, went through things with my mom, but the way we handled it was different, and our reactions to it was different. And we still see it different 50 years later,
Later.
so it's weird.
Um, so when you went to your doctor and your doctor realized, hey, something is your GP, you went to your general practitioner, and she realized that something was happening. There was something wasn't exactly right. She put you off work for a month. In that month, did she also prescribe that you go to see a mental health professional? What did you do in that month?
Well, I had already been seeing a psychiatrist. Well, I
Okay.
was seeing I can't remember the word, but I was seeing a psychologist that was also licensed to prescribe medication, because usually it's
Okay.
a
Psychiatrist.
psychiatrist and then a psychologist, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So I was seeing one that was able to do both.
Hmm.
And so I was seeing her regularly, and they put me in an intensive outpatient program. So I was going full day to a program. And what the IOP is that you're in a group therapy type setting, and they
Hmm.
are regulating your medication and teaching you coping skills and different things like that. And then I went back to work after the month, still seeing the professional.
Okay.
And that didn't work. And I had another episode and had to be rushed to the emergency room. But they didn't think that I was severe enough that I was a danger to myself.
You
So
had a
I
panic
still had to
attack?
go back to work.
You
I'm
had a
sorry.
panic attack? You had a panic
I
attack?
had I would just stop functioning. The
Oh,
depression got bad
almost
again.
like in a
Well, it was
catatonic
still bad.
state?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. But they
Mhm.
didn't. The ER didn't think that I was a danger to myself.
Okay.
When you go into the ER, they give you uh, you have to answer. It's called a DSM-5,
Yeah.
and you answer those questions, which is
Mhm.
ridiculous, um, because it doesn't always tell you whether you're a danger or not, because
Right.
there's ways around it. So they sent me home, and I ended up, I want to say, 2 weeks later, having a breakdown at my desk.
Mm.
Um, um, slurring my words and passing out at my desk on and off, and ended up back at the ER
Mhm.
and in the hospital for 7 days. And that was the last time I worked at that job. Um, so, you know, it's it's eye opening,
Mhm.
but we know ourselves
Mhm.
when we know when we're not well.
Right.
We just have to fight to tell someone that we're not well.
Mhm.
Um, um, and we know what level we're at, like Pac-Man. We know what level
Yeah.
when we're getting there.
Mhm.
And so, I knew when I went there the first time that
That you weren't
it was a
well.
dangerous,
Mhm.
point. I don't know if I was at a suicidal level, but I knew that I was reaching rock bottom, you know.
Gotcha.
So the the when I had the breakdown at the desk, I didn't go to the ER right away,
Mhm.
but my psychiatrist was
Mhm.
contacted right away. And so she told my husband, she said, I'm not going to make her go right now, because I was refusing to go because I was terrified. And so she said to me, I'm not going to
Mhm.
make him take you right now, but you better be there in the morning, or else I'm sending the police to your house.
Mm.
So, you know,
Okay.
um,
So
I
what was
had
the
to go the
course of
next.
treat I'm sorry. So you went in for
No, no, go
the
ahead.
next day. You went in the next
Mhm.
day, and what was the course of treatment moving forward and your diagnosis?
Severe treatment resistant depression. depression.
Oh, I
Um,
haven't heard of that before.
and treatment resistant depression means that your the the medications don't work. That's the easy.
Okay. So it's like your body
Um,
doesn't metabolize the medications properly.
hmm
Okay,
yes.
that I have
So
heard of.
I
I
can.
didn't know it was called treatment-resistant depression because I have
Hmm.
someone who's close to me who had to have a whole panel done because they were giving them antidepressants and nothing was happening, and anxiety medications and nothing was happening, and the doctor was like, "Wait, nothing like this has ever happened before." At least one of them would possibly work, so they had to do like a genetic panel and found out that they do not metabolize antidepressants in their system,
Hmm.
so it's not going to work. Yeah. And I thought that
Yes.
was, I was like, "What? That's a thing?"
Yeah.
This just happened maybe about 2 months ago, and I was like, "I didn't know that was a thing." Like, so you can't take antidepressants at all? No. I cannot take any, the person was like, "I can't take any, antidepressants or antipsychotic medications because they just don't work for me." I'm just like,
Yes.
"Okay."
And
So
that panel, the gene type panel just came up.
Mhm.
It's probably about 2 years old or whatever.
Oh,
So we're
okay, okay.
talking. I have taken every medication known to man since
Mhm,
since then, and just had the panel done about
mhm.
2 years ago.
Okay.
And still nothing is working. But so every 6 to 8 weeks, I'm
Mhm,
doing new. It's a mess, but
mhm,
yeah, severe. It's severe or severe depression, major
mhm,
depressive disorder, treatment
mhm.
resistant depression, with other things, the anxiety, PTSD, um, you name it. uh,
Right.
there.
So
So,
what was the course of treatment for you?
well, in the hospital, just trying to find the medications that would work at that point. I have had electric shock treatment three
Oh, wow.
times. I have
They still
done.
do that?
Hmm.
They still do that?
Oh
Wow.
yeah. Hmm.
Okay. Mhm.
I've had TMS, trans magnetic stimulation
Yeah, I've heard of that.
treatment. I have
Mhm,
had EMDR. Um, I have had, like I said, every medication known to man.
mhm.
I think the only thing that I have not done is hypnotism and ketamine treatments at this
Okay.
point. Yeah. Um,
Mhm,
I have done inpatient treatment. I have done outpatient treatment. I have done partial hospitalization.
mhm.
So I've been through a lot.
Yeah,
Over
it
the
sounds
past.
that way. It sounds that
Yes.
way. But
Yes.
you're here today. That's the most important thing.
Yes.
And you're
Yes.
speaking up about it. And I think it's something that a lot of people um, need to hear and need to understand. In our preliminary discussion, one of the things that you talked about was Superwoman Syndrome, right?
Hmm.
Where
Hmm.
a lot of women feel like they need to be the glue in the community, in their lives, in
Yes.
everybody's lives, especially Black women, right? And this can be at the expense of their emotional health, their physical health, and their mental health, right?
Yes.
So how or what would you tell them to negate this unrealistic view of themselves?
I say death to the superwoman. That's what I say. Throw her out the window. Throw her off the
Throw
nearest
her
rooftop.
away.
That's right. Kill. I won't curse, but kill her. Um,
Mhm,
you know, um, we've watched it. We've watched it. One of the things that I had a recent discussion with one of my sisters, because everybody, you hear a lot of discussions about trying to. We want to be our grandmas.
mhm.
We want to have the marriage like our grandma. We want to be like our grandma. Grandma wasn't happy. Grandma wasn't happy. Grandma stayed with grandpa in some cases because she couldn't buy a house because she couldn't get it in her
Right,
name. She stayed
right.
with grandpa because she couldn't, work outside the house.
Mhm,
Look, my grandma. was happy when my grandpa, she wasn't with
Mhm.
grandpa at the time, because you know what I'm saying? Like there was so much behind that. And it sounds funny, but it's true, you know,
Mhm.
in a lot of
Yeah,
cases. And
absolutely.
we don't have to do it all, you know,
Mhm.
like let's just talk the past month about the 92%. You
Mhm.
know, like everybody's mad at us right now, but
Right.
we're not doing it, you know, and how how freeing it is to say we're not going to do it.
Mhm.
Um, we can't do it. We
No, we
cannot do it
cannot anymore.
because we're tired. We are exhausted,
Mhm.
and it takes too much to try to do everything.
Mhm.
And you're talking to someone who has done it. You know, I grew up in a parentified household. I have been cooking
Mhm.
since I was 7 years old.
Same here.
My brother had to turn the stove on so I can
Mhm.
cook because I wasn't allowed to turn on the stove, but I had to cook
Mhm.
dinner before my
Oh,
mom
wow.
got home. I have been paying bills. I would leave the fourth grade and pay the
Mhm.
phone bill and the electric bill on the way home from school. When my
Wow.
baby brother got in trouble, I was the
Mhm.
one that got called, not my mom. Um,
Mhm.
so I got home from school at 10 years old, and I cooked dinner and I made sure my baby brother's homework was done and my homework was done. You know, that's the life that I lived, you know, and
Mhm.
I've been doing that all my life. And I'm 56 years old now. I'm
Mhm.
exhausted, you
Right.
know. Um, and so, you know, to some people, that's a badge of honor, you know,
Mhm.
I cooking is my love, and it's
Mhm.
something that I made money doing, but I
Mhm.
am still tired, you
Okay.
know, and we're all, a lot of us are like that. But, and the
Mhm.
flip side is I'm here having this conversation with you because I'm depressed, you know,
Mhm.
that I had a nervous breakdown because that's
Mhm.
the life that I lived. And there's
Right.
millions of us out there like that.
Mhm.
And so no is a whole sentence,
I say
you
that
know.
all the time.
My
No is
girlfriend,
an entire sentence on its
a
own.
whole sentence. And I still
Mhm.
don't know how to do that. Tracy, I still don't know how to say no.
No?
I
Oh.
still don't. You
I
know,
said
I'll
my
say
middle
no.
name should have been No, because I would
I
tell
need
you
to make
no quickly.
t-shirts.
I tell people that all the time. I tried the yes for a while because before you could even get the question out, usually my answer was my kids were like, "But you haven't even heard what we were saying, Mom." It's like, no. You know? And then I'm like, okay. So I tried like listening and, and tried saying yes a lot more. That thing stressed me out. It stressed me out.
I envy that.
I went back to no. I can't do that right now. No. And a lot of no's without explanation.
I can't. I never learned how to do that.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time it's no, I mean, you know, it's because you want people to love you. You're
Mhm.
afraid that saying no is going to make people angry at you, which is me.
Yeah.
Um, and so, you know, we just keep saying yes to everything. We keep trying to do everything. We want to make it look, we want to be, you know, always look good.
Mhm.
And it's killing us.
I
It's
know.
making us take
I've
these
seen it
front
in action.
medications every day.
Yeah,
And
I've seen it.
we
I've
have to
seen
stop.
people who always say yes and they try to be everything to everyone, just literally fall apart. And I'm like, oh, no, I don't want that for myself. You know? So I just made no my, like, and if I start say yes and I get into something and it is not serving me, it is causing me more stress than it is bringing me pleasure, or contentment. I can live in contentment for a while. I'm going to step away. And I tell you all of this up front. So you're going into it knowing what's possibly going to happen, you
Right.
know? So, yeah, I have learned. how to guard my mental health seriously, because I have issues in my own life, like illnesses, physical illnesses that just does not afford me to do certain things at certain times. And I have gone through depression, and I'm just like, not a good place to be, not somewhere I want to sit. Um, and I do everything humanly possible to make sure that mentally I'm serving myself first, because I
Right.
can't serve anyone else unless I'm
Right.
serving me first. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And I know it's not that easy for most people to do. Um, and it's not easy to maintain, because, like, you talk about being the pariah. Oh, she's just difficult. Oh my God, she doesn't play great in the sandbox. Oh, okay, whatever. I mean, sometimes it does get to you because you're like, that's not who I am. You know what I mean?
Right.
I do go out of my way to help people, but it has to also not cause me undue stress.
Right.
you know, that's just
Yeah.
it. It's a balance for me, right?
Right.
If sometimes you want to help somebody and you get out there and you start helping that person, and then the first thing you realize, like, oh my God, I'm stressed out, like I can't
Right.
sleep, I can't eat, it's interrupting my day, it's interrupting my job, it's interrupting everything. And then you step away and that person thinks you're the worst person in the world, and you just have to be able to sit with that, because
Yeah.
in your heart that's not what it is. And I think it's hard for a lot of people to get to that point. I've always been a very stoic person, so I think for me it's a little easier, you know. But I do understand where it can be really hard for some people to sit in that place, because as women, I think we are just people pleasers, and we
Yes.
want to make sure that everybody's okay and everybody's good. And then we forget that we need to be okay. We need to be good. You can't be a
Yes.
good mother if you're not good.
Right.
You can't be a good partner if you're not good. You can't be a good friend if you are not good.
Right.
So, yeah, I totally understand everything that you're saying. And I hope that the audience really resonates with this, because I think that's where a lot of women are sitting right now, not being able to say no, not being able to put themselves first without feeling like they're being selfish.
Yes.
And it's
I
not
tell
selfishness, it's self-preservation.
yes. And
Mhm,
that's it. That's the key. Yes.
mhm,
I think I came up with a thing lately, and I said, when someone asks you to do something,
mhm,
say, when can I give you an answer? When do you need
mhm,
an answer by? And give yourself time to mull it
mhm,
over and really think about it. Well, can
mhm,
I do this without stressing myself out?
mhm,
Can I do this? Do I have, like if somebody asks you to say something, make something, do I have
mhm,
the ingredients on hand? Is the store nearby? Do I have gas to get there? How long,
mhm,
like think about it that way.
mhm.
If it's going to stress you out, then you tell them no. That's
Right.
it.
Exactly.
You know, and
Do
then
you
move
have the
on.
bandwidth? Do you have the emotional,
Right.
physical, and mental
Exactly.
capacity to
Right.
take on that
Exactly.
particular task? And
Right.
sometimes I want to do things and I'm just like, yes, it sounds like a great idea,
Right.
just not right now. Can we revisit this in a month? Can we revisit
Right.
this in 2 months? Right? You really have to get to that point, ladies,
Right.
because we cannot keep carrying the world on our shoulders. The weight is really heavy.
Right.
So, one of the other things I wanted to talk to you about, because you kind of mentioned it a little bit, and I wanted to see if we could dig a little deeper, was generational trauma, right? Uh, so often generational trauma goes on unaddressed in our community, especially. And you also talked about the fact that 2 or 3 people can live in a household and they come out with 2 or 3 different ideas. Because I know I've had that with like my siblings. I'm like, did we grow up in the same place? Like, what are you talking about? you know? And they're like, no, blah, blah. I'm like, that didn't happen. Right? And they're like, yes, yes, yes. But that was their purview. So
Right.
perception, right? Based on your own personal and emotional wherewithal can
Right.
change the perception of the person, even though the three people were, or four people, or five people were in the same exact household with the same parents experiencing relatively the same things.
Right.
So, to that end, how do we address? How do you think we go about addressing those generational traumas, and especially with siblings? We're talking about siblings right now who have friction between them because they're seeing things from varied perspectives, not realizing that their individual personality plays in to how they perceived what happened in the household that everyone grew up in. And so that has caused friction with them in their adulthood and caused them not to be close or
We
being able to actually talk about openly what has happened. I know that's a layered question. I'm sorry.
I have two brothers,
Hmm.
one older, one younger. So I'm the only girl. And my brothers and I are very close. My mother calls them my sons,
Hmm.
especially my baby brother. We're 18 months apart. And my oldest brother is 5 years older than I am.
Hmm.
So he also wasn't living with us after 13 years old.
Okay.
So so yes, we do have varied experiences at different times.
Hmm.
And I was angry at my brothers for a long time, although we didn't stop speaking
Hmm.
because they didn't seem to understand why my mental health was worse than theirs.
Hmm.
And they weren't here. I didn't think that they were hearing me. I didn't think that they were hearing me, and I didn't think that, and I knew that the rest of my family wasn't hearing me. Like nobody was understanding why I was where I was, as
Hmm.
especially as far as my mother was concerned. And it was not until about a year ago that my brothers got it, that it was different
Hmm.
because she did not, it was me. I was her target.
Hmm.
Like it was me. Like she went out of her way to abuse me.
Hmm.
And they did not realize that they recognized it. Like, because we were sitting there, we're having a conversation, and all of a sudden it clicked, like, well, yeah, she did do that to her, but she didn't do that to me. And on that day, such and such happened, and she did that to her, but she didn't do that to us. And then my uncle said, well, yeah, we did notice that they did, she would let them go, but she didn't let Don Don do. And, all of these connections started happening. And it was like, okay, okay. Yeah, she did stuff to us, but she did target her. And the conversation changed. And it wasn't that, it didn't change to say that they weren't, that they didn't suffer in different ways, but it changed because they realized that in many different ways they get it.
Got
Donna
you.
did suffer
Hmm.
a lot, and that
Okay.
there were instances that, like, now we get it. Now we see why
Hmm.
she's, struggling a little bit more in that area than we are, because, and so the resentment melted a little bit as far as I was concerned, and the
Okay.
understanding opened up a little bit as far as they were concerned.
Have you
And
guys been I'm sorry.
no, no, go ahead, go ahead.
Have you guys been able to have this discussion with your mom?
She refuses. She
Oh,
refuses. Yeah,
wow.
she says
Okay.
that she's not going to have the conversation because we're not going to sit there and blame her for everything.
Got you.
That's a whole nother Oprah show. um, um,
Mm.
when it comes to the generational trauma,
Mhm.
I keep hearing I keep hearing from people in my family about how they're very proud of me for having the conversation, for saying things out loud.
Mhm.
And I'm honored, but I'm also angry
Mhm.
because you're saying that you're proud of me for having the conversation, but you won't have the conversation.
Mm.
And there's so much that they could do
Mhm.
to heal me, to help me heal, if they
Mhm.
would just have the conversation. And there's so much, there are so many elders in your family. There are so many elders in so many families that if
Right.
they would just sit down at Thanksgiving dinner, Christmas dinner, and just
Mhm.
start talking and sharing,
Mhm.
and they could do so much for the for us and the younger generation,
I think,
and change the whole landscape just by
yeah, I
having
don't
a
think
conversation.
that's going to happen unless they're open to therapy, because what you're asking them to do is to unmask their own demons, and they're not ready to
Exactly.
do that.
But
They don't want to
but
be the villain in your story. So they figure if they don't confront it, then you're making them the villain. They did not make themselves the villain. Yeah.
exactly. I was having that conversation
Yeah.
with my uncle last week, and he was talking about someone in my family saying, "Well, did you hear?" Said to him, "Well, did you see what Don said? And did you
Mhm.
see the things that she's writing?" And they were crying, and he was like, "Well, you could call her and tell her. I'm sure she'd be happy to hear, that
Right.
you read it or whatever." And I'm
Mhm.
like, "No, because then they would have to uncover their part."
Yeah. Yeah. The
But
part that
I
they
would
had
have
to
been
play,
so
whether it's
touched.
active or silent. Yeah.
But I would have been so touched, like
Yeah.
that would have helped, because then I would have been like, okay, well, you acknowledged your part, and you would have
Mhm.
acknowledged that and really that's all I
Mhm.
wanted. That's all I
Yeah.
want from that person, to
Right.
say I knew and I just didn't know what to do.
Mhm.
And that would have been the end of it, you
Gotcha.
know? But did sometimes sometimes we don't want an answer.
Mhm.
We don't want an apology. We don't want an answer.
We just want
Sometimes we
acknowledgement.
just want,
Yeah.
yeah,
Acknowledgement.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but what we're doing as Black women
Mhm.
is a big thing, you
Mhm.
know. Just to have this is major. Just to do what you're doing,
Mhm.
is major for us as Black women. So we're breaking the chains because we're having these discussions that our moms wouldn't have done, our grandmas
Mhm.
wouldn't have done. So we're breaking those chains. So we have to be proud
Yeah.
about it.
I think I'm fortunate enough to say that I have had these discussions with my mom before she passed. I had these discussions with my grandmother, like, talking about their lives and the traumas that they went through and how that impacted, me and how they raised me and stuff like that. So I don't think a lot of people get those opportunities,
That's
but I'm
awesome.
fortunate enough to say I had those opportunities before my mom
That's awesome.
and my grandmother passed. And it gave me the opportunity to do what I needed to do, right? Which is to find peace and to be able to forgive, right? For whatever I feel what that was done to me and was wrong, to understand where they were coming from, what they did. Sometimes, and this is not an excuse, but sometimes we have to give our parents grace because they raised us with the knowledge they had, right?
Right.
And if they hadn't unpacked certain things, then they were kind of just repeating what was done, right? And I'm looking at that from the point of, I used to be an educator and I see things that parents did to their kids and see things that I felt like my mom wronged me with. And, I had to come to the understanding that a lot of what she did, and this is not for most people, this is just me. what she did, most of it was out of love, and some of it was out of knowledge, right? Um, lack of knowledge in, when it comes to certain aspects of emotional health. Um, but yeah, I think that if these conversations happened more often, that people would be able to heal, right? Especially if the person is open to taking ownership in the part that they had to play, not to go on the defense, but to actually take ownership in the part that they had to play and sincerely apologize. Whether you felt you did it because that's what you knew, or that's what you were going through in that situation. Taking ownership of it is, I think, is what most people want. Acknowledgement that it happened,
Yes.
right? Just acknowledgement that it happened. Stop trying to gaslight people and tell them that it didn't happen. It absolutely did, right?
Exactly.
So I think
Exactly.
that those conversations, if parents with the baby boomers would be open to having those conversations with their kids, it would be beneficial to their mental
Yeah.
health. And not only that, I think once you get that acknowledgement, it allows you to heal and then to be better parents to your children and your grandchildren. Because I
Yes.
think a lot of people are walking around with that resentment and that hurt. And they either do one thing, they actually go back and perpetrate the same behavior with their offsprings, or they go in such an opposite direction. And either aspect, right? Whether you're perpetrating the same behavior or you are going completely left wing, right? Where you're not doing anything that was done to you at all, or parenting in any way whatsoever, like your parents did, can be both detrimental to your child. There
Yes.
needs to be a middle ground, and middle ground to me can only be found with conversations, with those healing conversations on both
Yes.
sides. Everybody needs to go to therapy.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your business diva with let me see,
Depression.
depression.
Yes.
You go around the country and you talk to people about your story and help them through those healing processes by opening up and telling your story. And hopefully it has an imprint upon them and they can go forward and talk to their their parents and whoever it is in their lives to do the same so they can find a healing place. Am I correct?
Yes.
Mhm.
I started out as a blogger,
Mhm.
and then I took a public speaking course and have gone from there. And I started my podcast, Breaking the Mask of Depression, 3 years ago. And here I am. I have spoke on panels, pharmaceutical companies. I have done um, conferences with pharmaceutical companies and different places. So I'm just out there trying to raise my voice and, get the resources out there and get the word out there.
Awesome. So, if you had to leave our audience with three strategies, tips, or signs that they should look out for, whichever you want to use or combination, to help them to identify either that they're having a mental health crisis or getting beyond it, what would those three things be?
The first one would be irritability. That is a big sign. The second one, either sleeping too much or not sleeping at all, and overeating or undereating. Those are the three biggest ones that I would um, pay attention to. And if you notice any of those signs, get to your primary care physician right away.
Okay.
Those are the biggest
And
ones.
okay. What makes you an impactor?
My cold hearted truth and unpolished language about the
Mhm.
mental health crisis.
Mhm.
That's it.
I like that.
And my use
All
of
right.
the F word.
Oh, okay. Well, you didn't drop it today, so that's good.
I was trying to be nice. I don't want
You
to.
try to be nice. Okay. All right. Well, Didi, thank you so much for being our guest here on
Thank you for
Impactors
having
Out
me.
Loud today. I truly enjoyed this conversation. Um, it was educational, it was
Thank you.
heart wrenching, and it was transformative, at least for me, because
Thank
I'm
you.
seeing some things that you said in some people I know, and I'm going to have some conversations today.
Thank you. Thank you. Send
Yes.
them my way.
Yeah. All right. Can you tell people where they can find you, and if you can pitch for your speaking gigs as well?
I can be my website is divawithdepression.com, and my podcast is Breaking the Mask of Depression, and it's at all the podcast sites that you listen to, and divawithdepression@gmail.com if you'd like to reach out for speaking engagements.
Okay. All right. Thanks again, Didi,
Thank you
for being our
again.
guest today.